We're back, Sherry. Once again, another edition of Let Me Tell You Something.
Yeah, we are back. I'm excited about being back. Lots of things happening. A lot of stuff to cover. Sometimes we think we don't have enough time. As a matter of fact, when you and I have been visiting through the week, I've been doing a lot of reading and thinking about things and about these certain human values that are needed to win, which haven't changed, by the way, haven't changed, even though you're a youngster and it's the old man and the kid here that's doing the show. And I thought of something, I'm from a deep generation. There's a deep generation gap between you and me, but as we see, because, and I think of myself here, for all of us that were born before 1945, we were born before television, before penicillin, before shots, frozen foods, Xerox, plastic, contact lenses, Frisbees, and the pill.
The pill?
Yeah, the pill. We were before radar, credit cards, split atoms, laser beams, ballpoint pens, before pantyhose, dishwashers, clothes dryers, electric blankets, air conditioners, drip dry clothes, and before man walked on the moon. I grew up in a predominantly Christian community, and I thought fast food was what the Christians ate during Lent. And so we were before house husbands and gay rights, which is a credit to your generation and what's going on about progress and understanding and love. Okay? And gay rights, it's very important. We didn't know about computer dating. There was no, or dual careers or computer marriages. We were before daycare centers, and group therapy, and nursing homes. We never heard of FM, radio, or tape decks, or electric typewriters, never mind the computer, artificial hearts, word processors, yogurt, and another progress, guys wearing earrings. That's again about understanding and love and respect. For us, time sharing meant togetherness, not computers or condominiums. A chip meant a piece of wood, hardware meant hardware, and software wasn't even a word. So in our day, I should tell you this, cigarette smoking was fashionable. Grass was mowed. Coke was a cold drink and pot was something you cooked in. So no wonder sometimes we get confused because there's such generation gap. But think of all the progress we've made about understanding. But the human behavioral things about what's right and wrong has not changed and what it takes to win.
Sherry, that was extremely poetic, and I'm taken back from what you just said.
Yeah.
I feel extremely young hearing that, and I'm sure you feel a little old after saying that. But Sherry, you raised a great point. What it takes to win has not changed throughout history. So the Las Vegas Golden Knights this past week signed their first player in Reed Duke from the Brandon Wheat Kings, that you know very well.
Well, think about this. The assistant general manager, Kelly McCrimmon, okay? Think about it. He was the owner of the Brandon Wheat Kings. He was the president. He was the manager. He was the coach. He was the cook. Okay? He was the bus driver. He was you name it. So if anybody's going to know this young man, Kelly McCrimmon's going to know him. He's going to know if the nurse dropped him when he was born, which is they're going to have to do that kind of research for all the other players they're going to get. So they knew everything about this guy, and that's not a surprise is what I'm saying. If they're going to sign a guy right now that they feel confident about, they have the inside track knowing about this guy.
It's the first of many moves that are to come. Just to go over some rules about the expansion draft, teams are allowed to either protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or 8 skaters, can be as many forwards or defensemen as they want, and a goalie as well. No movement players must be protected. So Sherry, George McPhee was just at the general manager meetings, okay, for the first time. Mm-hmm. It's certainly not the first contact that he's had with these general managers this year. What kind of things do you think he's been going over with them so far?
Well, that's a really good question here. And the real issue here is this, that they'll have done a lot of, and if they haven't done a lot of preparation, and I know this general manager really well, George McPhee, you can be, because being ill prepared is the first step for defeat and disaster. And I know, George, they would have done a lot of mock drafts already, the things that they've done. The real issue that he's got to understand is that time means nothing right now, and praise means nothing. It's the task in front that's important. And they got a major task. They've been looking at this. And he'll be telling his staff, if what they did yesterday looks big to you today, then you haven't done much today. Because when you break this whole thing down of what they got to do, this, as you pointed out, this isn't the first time he's talked to these general managers. There is so many issues here that they're trying to deal with, as you and I have talked about earlier. And speaking about that, the rules of the expansion draft and the rules for the entry draft, which, aside from knowing all the rules, the issue is aligning the players. The issue is knowing, that means they have to know everything about those pro teams, not just in the NHL. They got to know their farm system. They got to know everybody in the American League. They got to know all the guys that were drafted in the junior. They got to have significant dissection of those reports. They got to know, they have to know, as I said earlier, not to repeat myself, they have to know if the nurse dropped them when they were born. It's that simple. That's the kind of history they got to know on these guys. And if they don't, because I believe, and you asked me this question before, I believe that they've got, they can be competitive within 4 or 5 years, like real competitive. I don't mean just winning some games, if you know what I'm saying.
Sherry, you talk about how you think they're going to be competitive in a couple of years, but we've seen some other expansion teams, the Atlanta Thrashers, for example, they've had a real tough time generating any success, and even after their move to Winnipeg, they still haven't won a playoff game.
Well, they came into the league in Confederation. I mean, let's be honest, and that's a good point. But here's what's going to be going on here right now with McPhee and his staff. There's all kinds of plotting and planning going on here. There's going to be teams that say, hey, he knows they need a goalie. So I get first shot at everybody's second goalie. So if I take a couple, like, what can you do for me? Never mind how much you love me. What can be done? Or if it's not a goalie, what about if I don't take a certain player? Because whether they know it or not. What are we talking about here? What, in relationship to what your franchise is all about and about to be in the future, how can we help each other? And that's not done with just a phone call. That's done with a lot of their staff dissecting, knowing the other organization they're talking to, generally opening discussion, not talking about anybody specific. You can be sure that McPhee and his staff will know the players they really are interested in. When it comes right, wrong, or indifferent, they'll have it done. So they won't, like, if I'm calling you as a general manager, I'm not saying I want Joe Schmagoo. I'm going to say...
A friend of the show, Joe Schmagoo.
Yeah. Good guy, good player, too. But...
Highly skilled.
The real issue is this, is that, without saying that, hey, the players that are going to be available, I'm going to know, I'm going to see in time, without revealing anything, because I've had very often people call me and say, I've had agents call me, say, listen, our player would prefer not to go there. And we weren't interested in him anyway. We said, just a minute here. Am I going to pass up on this guy? Which we were going to pass up on him anyway. Then I'd talk to them about getting some help about perhaps a European player that I know they got in there. And then what can I do and how do I encourage that kid to come and so forth. So, and sometimes it was a player that we were going to take, and we'd say, look, we're not here to satisfy you about this guy. This guy's the best player that we think's available. And we got a franchise to build. So we're not giving up on this. So I don't want to fool all Sherry that, no, we're not a second-class cousin here. This is the issue here, and we're taking them. But there were times, as I said, where we didn't have an interest, but we let them believe we had an interest because we never revealed our hand. And we used to tell players in the draft, we never told them we were going to take them in the second round or the first round, because you end up, I say that I'm going to take you in the first round, and then we come to the draft and Bobby Orr's there. We're not taking you, okay? You're not being picked. So now we end up being a liar. Now, generally speaking, a young guy, when he's a real good player, knows. But we used to always tell the players, if you're there when we want to pick you, we're taking you. And therefore, we didn't get in. And sometimes we were surprised. players we had ranked a lot higher were there. And so we could never get caught about lying to the agent or lying to the player. But you can be sure we had a plan.
To clarify, for the entry draft, Vegas will have the same odds as the team who finishes with the third least amount of points, so their pick will not be lower than sixth in the first round. Clearly, there's potential to land a franchise player. And if you think about it, Sherry, the fact that they can only protect either 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie, or 8 skaters and 1 goalie, there's going to be a lot of good players to choose from.
Well, it sure is, because all of a sudden, I want to protect 4 defensemen. I can only protect then 7 players, because you and I have talked many times about the value of a blue line. And if you got 4 good blue liners and a good goalie, and some of the right, now you're limited. Now there's some players available, or you have to expose them. It's as simple as that. So there's a lot of planning and plotting on these other teams, even though they're all not thinking about that right now. All the teams are thinking, hey, how do we let's quit the pitter patter, let's get out and make the playoffs. But the point is, there's decisions for them to make, and as soon as they reveal it, you can be sure that the Knights will have alternate plans as to who they'll have a lot of predictions as to what they think that team's going to do anyway. They'll know how good their 4 defensemen are that they're likely going to, but they'll have an alternative move for every position that those teams take, and they'll know them well. And I'll bet you that they've done at minimum of 12 mock drafts already. I'll bet you a minimum where they get their staff together and get people. And then you say, very simple, maybe we're down to picking Jesse Pollock. Like, could you believe that? Like, that means we've got a number of blind people in the room around the table, with all due respect.
Shooting off. Hey, I was not a bad player in my day, okay?
Well, it depends on how you define bad, okay? That's a big definition, okay? But the point now is, now we've decided that they're not going to protect this guy. They're like, let's get out of here. Let's get out of this room. Let's get in the rinks and stuff like that, and to see is that blue line is, because we want everybody's input, not just 1 or 2 or 3 guys here. They'll have crossovers so that they can really do a proper evaluation. And if I know McPhee, they'll be ready.
And McPhee has built a tremendous foundation with the Washington Capitals. Mm-hmm. He was responsible for help putting together that team that really has been dominant since he was there.
Right.
If you look at it, with the exception of maybe a couple of seasons.
Yeah, with additions, yeah.
So, Sherry, now let's look at some of the better teams in the league. Okay, we're approaching the playoffs soon. Teams like the Washington Capitals, for example, Chicago Blackhawks, Minnesota Wild have been on fire. Which teams are the ones that you would really ride on going down the stretch in particular?
Well, here they come again. If you're at the racetrack, here they come again. Chicago Blackhawks. Always, there's a certain time of the year that you're always talking about the Blackhawks. There's another time of the year they're saying, oh, they didn't get off to a good start, or they got this problem and they got this issue. But as you know, and you follow it very, very specifically, at this time of the year, they're always in the subject about who's going to win. And here they are again. They got an impressive record.
Well, yeah, they're 9-1-0 in their last 10 games. They lost 3 in a row at the end of January, Sherry, but they're 11-1 since. And that includes 2 wins over Minnesota, 2 wins over Edmonton, 1 against Pittsburgh, 1 against the New York Islanders, who have been very hot lately, and 1 over the Nashville Predators.
And especially even the teams that might not be in the Pittsburgh category, those teams they beat are all fighting to get in the playoffs, those other guys. So those are, they're ready. But the point is, as I said, here we go again. Okay, so they're an automatic. Now, Washington's made a big statement. Like, we're sick of being a bridesmaid here. We're going to the dance here. And as you and I talked about in previous shows, they've made a decision here. And Holtby's as good as they are as any goaltender in the league, and and it's not just all of a sudden. He's been very consistently good for a few years now, which is a key. They've added a real good offensive defenseman, and by that, as we say, they've made a statement. We're sick of being a bridesmaid. And make no mistake about it, those guys are going to be contenders. Pittsburgh is automatic discussion. I mean, they're just talk about their leadership and who their guy is.
Okay, I want to say something here. You talk about leadership, Sherry. And I know that off the show we've talked about Washington and Pittsburgh. I'm telling you right now, it's my opinion at least, that if Pittsburgh plays Washington in the playoffs, Pittsburgh's going to win for the fact that they have better leadership on their team. Kind of seems like a bit of an obvious statement, but if it's proven to work in the past years, Washington can't get past Pittsburgh. Doesn't matter how good of a team they build. I love a guy like Alexander Ovechkin, love Nicklas Backstrom. They're exciting players to watch. I know they obviously have some deeper players that add some leadership to their roster, but I think if you look at a guy like Sidney Crosby as a captain, against Alexander Ovechkin as a captain, you look at the leadership that they bring to both of their teams. Clearly, one of them has had more success in the past. I still think Pittsburgh gets past Washington.
Well, the reason you're saying that is because of Crosby. You can ask about leadership on any team when you mention Crosby.
Well, they're fresh off a Stanley Cup.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you compare if you're talking about leadership. It doesn't matter a bit when you mention Crosby's name. The way that he's so humble and he leads by conduct, and the players know there's an expectation there. But I'm telling you this. It's really conjecture. That's a big factor about winning, but they got their hands full more than they've ever had with Washington. Make no mistake, if there's a time, sure, I understand what you're saying about that what Washington hasn't done, and they've never won the big games.
We've seen it before. They've had President's Trophies teams. They haven't been able to win. Barry Trotz hasn't really proven anything in the playoffs either.
Yeah, but Barry Trotz has just been there a short time here. The culture isn't built in such a short time. Barry Trotz is I know Barry Trotz.
Great coach.
Oh, not only a great coach, great person. They are paying a lot more attention to defense than they did before that, and factors such as that. And that all I know is this: I can't pick one or the other because I think it's a pick 'em. And a lot of things could happen. But do I love the leadership that Crosby brings to a team, and the feeling that team has when they're playing, when they're in the dressing room preparing? That particular feeling with him leading them. And it doesn't matter about age, too, because that's exactly what's going on in Edmonton when they're all the feeling they have from their leader, and he's only 20 years old.
I agree with that. We've seen young captains win the Stanley Cup in past years.
So do I believe that that's a factor for them? Sure, that's a factor. The issue, though, is if you have enough ability and you have good goaltending, sometimes you can overcome that because they're just better. But that's going to have to be proven on the ice, because a lot of people are thinking what you're thinking, but I'm saying it's a pick'em series. And let me tell you this, though. How come you never mentioned the Minnesota Wild?
I was getting there.
But I'll tell you this, though. You mentioned some very important facts to me before we came on the air. I don't know if you remember about some of the key games they've lost lately. And so, but I'll tell you this.
They've lost to Chicago twice and Anaheim in their last 10 games.
Right.
And they lost to Columbus.
Right. Is that a factor? But I'll tell you what.
In their last 12 games.
Every single game, though, was a pick'em game. Every game there, and there's no blowouts going on with Minnesota. So when you're getting into best of sevens with them, you better not make a mistake, because they got Dubnyk and they've got a real good team, and they made a statement. And now, as we've talked about a lot on the show, they believe they can win, not hope they can win.
I mean, we've seen it recently. They haven't been able to get past Chicago. I think if they play Chicago in the playoffs, they're not going to be able to beat them. Personally, I don't think they have the leadership either. I just want to get back to Washington for a second, Sherry, and a team like the Minnesota Wild. You look at some of Washington's leaders, okay? They have Justin Williams on their team, who's won 2 Stanley Cups. Who else do they really have that are standout leaders to you? Do you think that Alexander Ovechkin is a real standout leader, or Nicklas Backstrom is a standout leader? Evgeny Kuznetsov, who's a young player as well, is a standout leader. I look at a team like Chicago or Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang. You look at the foundation that Chicago has with Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith. These are teams that just know how to win, and there hasn't been too much parity in the NHL in the last 10 years. I don't really anticipate anything to change in the coming playoffs.
Well, I do,
personally.
because the real secret that Washington's going to learn, in order to win, you have to play for each other. That's the key. Are you laying it on the line? Because if you're playing for the name on the back of your sweater, as opposed to me wanting to win for the players I'm sitting beside or playing alongside, that's the key to winning. And we're going to talk a lot about that in another. But the point is, I think that takes a while to get that, because it was always highlight goals about Ovechkin and firing one under the under the top bar and stuff like that. So to me, the real issue is if they've come together to play for each other and want to win for the other guy, they're a tough team to beat.
There's another team, Sherry, that we haven't even mentioned. The Montreal Canadiens. We talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins being strong in the East. They've won 6 games in a row. Carey Price has allowed 5 goals in his last 5 games. He's won all of those, by the way. Alex Galchenyuk has 7 points in his last 6 games. Claude Julien made a point out of getting him going.
Well, that was a commitment.
And what if the Canadiens face the Capitals in the playoffs?
Could be a good series. I mean, I don't think that as a matter of fact, I don't think any playoff series is a pushover. Some of the toughest series to get through is your first round. Make no mistake about it. That team is believing we're going to beat that top team. I've been in the playoffs a lot. Very often that's been the toughest round, because then once you win that round, you feel like you can win. You got momentum. You're feeling good. That's usually the toughest round. But let's go back to Claude Julien, who said at the very beginning in one of his press conferences, my job to get Galchenyuk to play the way that he can be. He's capable of, and the leadership that he brings. You know what I mean? And this winning feeling now that's been brought, that's a big factor. And when we talk about, let's not just write off Columbus right away in the first round either. I mean, take a look with that goaltender. How was that goaltender done in the last few games?
3 shutouts in his last 4.
Well, is that something? Because as we said earlier, and as I've talked to you very, very often, there's no 5-4 games very, very seldom in the playoffs. There's the odd time when things break down. But it's 2-1, 3-2, making the key move. It's a game of breakdowns. The issue is to break down as little as you can.
Our next guest hasn't broken down at all, Sherry. He's done more than 3,000 shows with Sportsnet's The Fan 590. He's taught at the College of Sports Media and Ryerson University. And he's even written biographies for past NHLers, including Canadian hero Paul Henderson. Recently, he was named the president of the Belleville Senators. We're now joined by Roger Lajoie. Roger, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, guys. Great to be with you.
Good to have you, Raj.
Thank you, Sherry.
So, Raj, you've been named the vice president of the Belleville Senators, and my first question to you is, are you going to stick to radio at all still, or what's the deal going to be with that?
I hope so.
Well, I hope so too, Sherry, and thank you, Jesse. And yes, it's a great honor and a privilege to be involved at the American Hockey League level. Most of my career has been as a broadcaster, but I've also been very fortunate to have turns working as a business manager of the Toronto Marlboros of the OHL, and I worked, as Sherry knows, for the Canadian Hockey League for 2 years as director of information, and I ran the team in Mississauga for 1 year for Mr. Melnick, and this opportunity required someone with a kind of unique set skill, and which is I have, and so I'm delighted there. I hope to be able to maintain it. Right now I am. We haven't dropped the puck yet, and Sherry knows once you start playing, things get a little more hectic. But I hope to continue working in the radio industry and Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Guys, I'm 25 years there in November, so I gotta make the 25th anniversary at least, and then I'll want the 30th.
Well,
so
first of all, those of us that listen to you, those of us like myself that know you so well, we want you to stay on the air. We know that it's a juggling act because there's a lot of responsibility you have, but you have some pretty loyal listeners. So I really hope that happens, because we do enjoy your guests and we enjoy your insights. And so and you make people feel very comfortable. So you should be proud of that.
Well, I am, and I thank you, Sherry. That means a lot coming from you, and that means you're going to have to guest on the show on a regular basis for another 5 to 10 years.
That's
so
okay.
If I can count on that, then you know what? Then that makes it that much easier, because you do a lot of the talking. It saves my voice, right?
That's right.
Which is really important.
That's so true. Well, speaking about your radio job, and I know how you follow it and stuff like that, it's an interesting down the stretch run here with these NHL teams that we just visited about on the air, that like who's going to make it and who isn't going to make it, and everybody's guessing and what the factors are, and the Leafs are in that hunt. I mean, you know, this is the capital of the hockey world, and if you don't talk about the Leafs, you know, they think that you banged your head somewhere. So,
well, you know, you're right about that, guys. And you know what's interesting is, like, you know, if you ever want to have a little bit of a laugh, just take a look at what people were saying at the start of the season and who was going to be in a playoff race and who wasn't. And you look at it last year, none of the 7 base Canadian teams made the playoffs. This year, although Vancouver and Winnipeg are certainly going to be in really tough still, 5 of the 7 might make it. And in the Eastern Conference in particular, there are the Leafs. How about the Ottawa Senators,
right,
the way they're playing? Montreal is, after that funk they were in, has started to separate themselves. So it is fascinating, guys, right down the stretch. I don't know, Sherry, Jesse, if it's a matter of the 3-point games. I don't know if it's a matter of the way the parity is in the league, or because, you know, the games are so tight. But my goodness, the standings are like the weather. If you don't like it, wait an hour, it'll change.
That's so true.
Same kind of thing in the NHL now. This is great stuff. And I don't think, Sherry, I hate to say this, you know, because the Leaf fans will be listening to you, I don't think they're quite there yet. I think it's going to be tough. I really do down the stretch here. It gets nitty-gritty and dirty right now, and I think they're going to battle to the end, but they're going to be in tough. I think the rest of the league is waking up, but boy, it sure is exciting.
I agree, Roger, and I just want to know your opinion of which teams you do think are going to just sneak in, because the Boston Bruins have been playing fantastic hockey. The New York Islanders have been very hot lately, both under new head coaches. The Florida Panthers have a tough schedule down the stretch, including games against Minnesota, Columbus, New York, Chicago, Montreal twice, and Washington. But the Tampa Bay Lightning have also been red hot lately. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10, so I'm just curious to who you think is going to squeeze into those final spots.
Tough question, Jesse, you know, and it's a guess because anything can happen down the stretch. Degree of difficulty of the schedule is without a question a factor. But end of the day, that's what I'm talking about. You know, you can say, well, geez, it's going to be tough because let's use an example, because they're going to have to play Washington down the stretch. Use that as an example. Mm-hmm. Well, who would you rather play down the stretch? Washington, that may have a 15-point lead for the President's Trophy in the last week of the season, or the Florida Panthers, who are 1 point out of a playoff spot, or, as Sherry well knows, maybe a team that's completely out of the playoffs, that's loosey-goosey, and guys auditioning for points for spots on a team next year, like they are in Carolina or Arizona, and Colorado. So define what's a tough schedule down the stretch. I think I might rather take my chances with a team that doesn't have anything to play for as a team that's playing desperate. And with so many teams playing desperate hockey, I'll put the schedule aside. I do not understand why the Florida Panthers are not more solidly in a playoff positioning. I don't get it. I know they had the coaching change and some injuries, but they're the team that scares me the most, Sherry, because they got veteran players coming back down the stretch.
That's
They're
right.
still in the hunt, and it's like they survived the season.
They should be better. They should be better than they are. And I'm not a big fan of that coaching change, by the way, and the perception of how it was done. But the point is that there's no. But I'll tell you what, that coach in Ottawa, he's got that. They do play for each other. I like the trades they made. They were key trades for guys that were gritty guys. They're getting very good goaltending. They got good support goaltending. If some, you know what I mean, and they really starting to believe in themselves. Those are big factors. They believe they can win now. And there's a big difference between believing you can win and hoping you can win.
Oh, amen to that. And you're right about Gerard Gallant, by the way. I thought that was atrocious, the way that was handled. And I'm a big fan of Turkey's, and I think he's going to do very fine moving forward. And you're so right about Ottawa. in the same way. We talk about what are the consistency to get to playoff time. You have to have great goaltending. You have to have guys playing dirty, gritty hockey. You need a good team concept, and you need a good team coach. Well, didn't we just describe the Ottawa Senators?
Exactly.
They don't have top 10 scorers. They're not all that exciting to watch a lot of nights, but they're winning hockey games. And what I like, Sherry, Jesse, they're winning on the road.
Oh, yes.
Like, and that's where if you can play that kind of, stuff with it's kind of funny because, Sherry, from teams you've had in the past, it's a lot easier to get teams to play that kind of, if I can say, boring style on the road than it is at home because you don't have the pressure to entertain as much.
Exactly.
So I think that's another factor that's got them going in their way. I wouldn't kick Ottawa off as a playoff team only because it's just still pretty close. But when you look at the schedule, you look at the number of games, you look where they're at, they're sure in the driver's seat right now, and I don't see any reason why they're going to fade down the stretch.
Well, look at this. Carlson, who's always in the conversation for Defenseman of the Year, leading in blocking shots. Blocking shots. Yeah. I mean, that's got a lot to do with coaching and convince on the system, and it's not about individual players. I mean, that really does say a lot about Boucher. I don't care what anybody says, and they are not just playing for themselves. But as you said, that the New York Yankees their whole goal was be 500 in the road and kill you at home, and they won all the time. And if you can get a team that's fairly consistent on the road, like you've said, that they're hard to play against, because in the playoffs, you're playing a minimum of 3 of them on the road.
Yeah, the block shot stat is a great one because the block shot stat isn't just on an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper. That's the one that the trainer sees in the dressing room after the game when the guy peels off the uniform. And it's the ultimate sign of somebody who's buying in to a program. Erik Karlsson, I think, is having, and it's funny because he's always in the conversation for Norris Trophy. I think he's having the best season of his career now in terms of his buying in at both ends of the rink and his team leadership and the way he's conducting himself. I think he's going to another level. And the reason people I don't think maybe are talking about him as much is there's always another guy coming down the pipe who's more interesting.
Yes.
If I had one guy the way he's playing right now on my blue line, I can't think of anybody at the top of my mind that I would pick over Erik Karlsson. And that's another factor heading into the playoffs, boy.
Absolutely. He's a 30-minute guy. Remember, that position is 60 minutes. He's taking care of 30 minutes of that.
Well,
at his position. So
and at a level that is just all-star.
It's a way
Norris
above.
Trophy winning. It's not just even chewing up the time. It's like how do you compete with that as another team? Well, the only way to compete is you've got a 30-minute stud, or you got a guy who's your second guy is almost as good that could hang in there, and there's very few in the league that can handle that. So I agree with you, Sherry. Karlsson makes Ottawa very dangerous, and as a guy who works in the business still in the media, it's really nice to see Canadian teams creating some excitement here down the stretch because we sure didn't have that last year, did we?
Oh my gosh! And think about the ratings compared to last year when none of the Canadian teams. But the interesting thing is, as you're aware, just go an hour and a half or so east of Ottawa, that team's coming on too. Claude Julien's got his grips in there, and you got guys like Galchenyuk, and we've already visited about that.
Carey Price,
yeah,
playing phenomenal hockey again.
Those guys are coming. As you said, I don't think you can predict because of schedules and who's coming. It's like the weather; it changes in an hour, but it's exciting to think about.
It is exciting to think about, and Montreal is another example. Sherry, you're right. Is when the team, runs into trouble. Listen, it's Carey Price. When you have the best goaltender in the world, it creates two things. The first thing it creates, when he's playing well, you got a fantastic chance to win. But secondly, whether he's playing well or not, you play differently because he's in goal. You've got a level of confidence now in this guy that, look, this guy is our guy. And so sometimes it covers up faults in your team, but sometimes those faults are just a reflection of you're so confident in this guy. People say, well, they play a little too loosey-goosey, and when he's not hasn't his gut. Well, what they've got to do is when he's hurt or not playing well, and the Canadians haven't been able to do that, is change your style.
Right.
But when Price is playing well, the Montreal Canadiens are as good as anybody in the NHL. There's no doubt about that, and it's a reflection of their goaltender. And yes, they got some guys buying in a little bit more. And although I don't like coaching changes per se, usually mid-season, all due respect to Michel Therrien, I think if you ask most people in hockey who's a better coach, him or Claude Julien, it's a pretty easy answer there.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of Claude, and this is not to be demeaning of anyone, because Claude Julien played for me in the Oshawa Generals, and he was just a gritty, hard-working, humble guy. But the thing that you said
but didn't everybody play for you at one point? Don't in the history of hockey, pretty much. It's hardly a big badge of honor, for heaven's sake.
That's so true.
You were a manager for 70 years.
Yeah, I know that. Do you want to talk about those guys in the 30s? I mean, let's get. So anyway, but the thing about the key goaltender, which I've talked about, and you touched on it exactly. It's the confidence when it's a 2-1 game, and he makes the big save, and you go down and make it 3-1 instead of 2-2. There's a total different feeling. There's a total different level of confidence. And they can now play. And when you hit it right on the head, I thought that's great analysis. When he's playing well, my gosh, you play with a style. You say, well, if we make a mistake, he's going to bail us out. And
right. You're more confident.
That's exactly right.
You're not overly nervous to make that one mistake. You know he's there for you. So, yes, exactly. Montreal and Ottawa, no question. They've got the driver's seat now. Not to jinx them, but you look at the pure math and the way they're playing, the way they're being coached, and their goaltending at this stage, it's hard not to like them for two of the spots. You guys and Jesse, you were mentioning Boston earlier and the Islanders, who are good teams in winning. Boston, I think, might have missed its best due date. I just don't know what to think about them some days. Like the last 2 years, they've been knocked out of the playoffs on the last day of the season. And if I'm not a betting man, but if I was a betting man, I might take the triple header, and that's the fate they're going to have this year too. They just seem to be a little bit short for whatever reason. Well, and anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, well, speaking of what you said, the confidence level, I don't have confidence in them because of what they're doing. It's the same old thing, Rask and so forth. I mean, there's not a level of confidence there, and that's what you got to have to win.
In fairness, Boston's been playing very well lately, but it's usually towards the end of the season that they start to deteriorate. So we'll have to see if under a new head coach that will be the case again. Because
that's a great point.
Yeah,
Jesse, that's a great point. Because yes, and we're talking about it today, but guys, at the end of the day, it's like the standings are so tight. It's like the season hasn't even started yet. There's 17 games to go, whatever it is in the season, and it's like it hasn't even started yet. Well, somebody now can get on a 6-7 game win streak, and all of a sudden the entire landscape discussion ends. So you're right about that. And yes, Boston has been good lately, and we'll see if they can maintain that. But boy, the games are getting. And I'll tell you, that Boston-Ottawa game the other night, Ottawa really impressed me, and Boston did not.
No.
So that's.
Well, here's the funny thing about it. Here's the great thing about it. If you're Canadian and this is your pastime, it's a heck of a great month ahead of us. And let's make no mistake about it. And that's why we want you to stay on the air so we can tune in and listen. And we can't thank you enough for you giving some time here, because I know you're running between all these different responsibilities that you have, and it means a lot to us that you give us some time, and I wanted to thank you for that, Dodger.
Sherry, I'll do it anytime, and I can't wait to get down in the studio and chat with you guys, because you have a terrific podcast going. It's entertaining, and anytime you need me, I'm around, and thank you. And Jesse, you keep up the great work as well, because you got a good thing going there, and my pleasure, boys, believe me.
Thank you so much, Roger. Appreciate the time.
Keep punching.
Thanks, guys.
What a fantastic personality, Sherry. So clear with his words. I guess that's what happens after 3,000 shows on The Fan.
The key term is good guy, too. Hard-working, good guy.
Roger's a great guy, and as one of his students, I can say he's a fantastic professor as well. Sure. Taught me sports writing, really taught me how to write. So, Sherry, Roger touched on a lot of the strong teams in the East, including the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens. Talked about the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. They're coming off of the tough California swing, and they haven't been winning too many games lately. So my question to you is Babcock going to stick with the rookies, or is he going to start to lean more on his veterans down the stretch?
Well, I think that he's used both, okay? I mean, here's the issue here. When they lost I hear people talking what I call foolishness. Losing builds character. You know what I mean? Hardship. No. Doesn't build character. You find out about your character when you find out what you're all about. It's easy when you're winning a lot and everybody's excited. You find out about the makeup of your team when you're going through some hardships. And for them to think that they weren't going to go, they knew that they were going to hit some hardships. And if you'd have told people, as Roger stated, if you'd have told people that this team was fighting in a playoff spot at this time of the year, they would have told you were nuts last September. They never expected the productivity of their young guys like they were. And guys like Kadri that's got 27 goals, and when you go on and on, I mean, think about this. And so we're going to find out about the character of that team. And now we're going to find out about what are they going to do about this. And, the leadership. We just talked about leadership in this show a lot. You pointed it out. You pointed out about the Crosbys. Those older guys, we're going to find out about what kind of leadership they give because they have to perform. And it's just not they got to be above average. They can't be just as good as ordinary. It's not sufficient anymore. The games are tighter. They're close, hard-fought games. And one mistake, as they discovered against San Jose with a little over a minute to go, one mistake, and you come out of there with no points. Not about how bad they played or whether the team had a lot more. And where are you giving up the shots? So you could, and there's some guys that I really know on that team that have a lot of care. They're young guys, and I think they're older guys. Okay? And Riley and these people, it's not sufficient now. They got to step up. Never mind whether they're young, never mind. And what do they know about winning? Those older guys haven't won a lot. This is a new experience for them to make sure that they lead into winning. Winning. And as I said earlier, everything they've done up to now, if what they've done yesterday looks big to them today, then they haven't done much today. And I said that earlier. Make no mistake now. We're not talking about what they've done. We're talking about what they're going to get done in the following games.
Some of the only experience sharing in the playoffs that some of these guys have is the collapse to the Boston Bruins. So, I mean, you can look at that as potentially a valuable experience going forward. These guys now know that you can't take a lead for granted, or you can't take, let's say, having a playoff position for granted down the stretch.
Here's what I'm saying. If they say, well, don't get too excited because we're too young, or our older guys haven't won before, they're giving themselves permission to lose. That was a big thing with Riley, the noted basketball phenom. Pat Riley. If they're giving themselves permission to lose, that's a guaranteed loss. They're going to lose. This shoulda, coulda, woulda won't get it done. Won't get it done. And so I want to know how they attack adversity, because that's going to tell me a lot about what they're going to be like down the line. That's going to tell me about their character. That's going to tell me how they play for each other. That's what we're going to see. And one of our guests that's about to come on that you're going to introduce, I know about his character. Make no mistake about it. He is a character player.
And sure, that guest happens to be Connor Brown, former player of yours in Erie. He was fantastic for you. He was fantastic for the Toronto Marlies, and he's been quite the player for the Leafs this year. He's been extremely valuable, playing on a line with first overall pick Auston Matthews for much of the season.
And deservedly. You don't put a guy with Auston Matthews unless you believe that he's smart enough to play with a guy like that he's determined enough, that he understands the game. And there's nobody, I can guarantee you, nobody understands the game better than he does. You watch him when he plays with his angles and everything else. He is a special player that's going to play in the NHL for a long time. And if it's with the Leafs, he's going to get him he's going to be one of the guys that helps them get to the promised land.
We're now joined by Toronto Maple Leafs forward Connor Brown. Connor, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Brownie.
Gary, what's going on?
Hey, buddy. We're pretty excited here that we got We're going to we've already given you this great introduction and so forth, so you won't hear it, but that's because we're going to make you listen to it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on the show, Connor. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, we're going to start taping right now.
Okay. Ready, guys? All right, we're now joined by Toronto Maple Leafs forward Connor Brown. Connor, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Hey, Brownie, how many times have you replayed that breakaway?
From last night?
Yeah, that breakaway.
Too many. Too many. It would have been an easier win for us if
I know, but
that one away, 4-0 game.
Listen, I was looking when the cameras were on your face and everything, because I know you like your son, and I knew it was going through your head a million times. The real key issue is this, Brownie, the fact that you got open and they found you, because that's your abilities, and that's absolutely your abilities. And so, I mean, hey, I was so after that puck didn't go in, I knew right away you're eating yourself up for about because you're so competitive inside. You know, I've been around you when you missed a short putt on the golf course, and it bugged you bugged you for 3 holes. So I mean, I know what that's.
Yeah, I'm working on releasing those a little bit quicker. The short putts, they get to me.
That's right.
All right, Connor. So Sherry mentioned earlier that Toronto is the hockey center of the universe. Your team is in a serious position right now to make a run at a playoff spot. So we're just wondering if you've ever felt this much pressure before to make the playoffs for a team.
Yeah, I mean, internally, you know, we try to keep everything in house, and the pressure that we really feel is from each other, and you know, so I mean, as much as it is a hockey hotbed, and how much our fans care, it's really, you know, to have success in this market, you gotta keep the circle small, and you gotta, you know, stay focused. But I mean, we're you know, we had a bit of a slide there, but we feel like we had a couple good practice days, and we're getting it back on track.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, and we go way back. I mean, when I see this team, and I got a question about this in a minute, I really do believe you play for each other, just like when you played with me in junior. The reason we won, how you guys played for each other, and I see, you know, from a hockey person and being around hockey, that's evident to me about. It's not an individual here, how you guys really do play for each other, and to me that's pretty evident. And
yeah, I think with the, you know, the age groups of, you know, we have a lot of young guys coming in together and a lot of guys in similar situations. We've kind of formed some serious bonds and some friendships, and you know, like we had in Erie there, Sherry, we had such a close group that you know, you just automatically you play better and perform better, and you want to win together.
Yeah,
and you know, it becomes more about. It's easier to become more about the team's success when that's the case, rather than your own success. And so, you know, and they also go hand in hand too. So, you know, it's an exciting time to be on this team, you know, and we feel confident, and it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's been a lot of fun. Day in, day out, it's a good time.
Sure, and I mean, I know how committed you are, but I got a question here, because I've seen you wherever you've been, you just keep getting better. Like, you're going to play a long, long time because how smart you are and how you know all the parts of the game. But I got to ask you this. Is there any difference between playing with Connor McDavid and Auston Matthews? You
know what? They're both extremely elite. It is different, but as, you know, some guys are... Auston is, in my eyes, he's a shooter. He's, like, his release and the way he can, like, catch a pass, especially not even a one-time. He does have a good one-timer, but just more how he can just catch and release pucks, and you know, he can bury. And where Connor's, you know, I remember when he was first on our team in Erie, I didn't think he'd score a goal all year because he refused to shoot the puck.
Right, that's so true.
He only had a couple goals at the beginning of the year, and they were all on breakaways.
Right.
But you know, but now obviously he's evolved and he understands. But you know, in that regard, they're different type players. But you know, the hockey IQ and just the ability to steal pucks and to make plays under pressure,
right,
and to kind of not feel pressure. You know, you can have a couple guys draped on you and he's still trying to make plays. So in that regard, you know, there's a lot of similarities.
But I don't want the public to forget that to put Connor Brown with those two elite players, that says a lot about Connor Brown.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's get something straight here. I know how humble you are, but I know you as a person, and I know where you've come from, and so that says a hell of a lot about Connor Brown, and let's not ever forget that, because I'll make sure everybody remembers that.
I'm sure you will.
They're certainly not going to put Sherry Basson with those guys, I can tell you that.
Yeah. You talk about high hockey IQ, and Connor, you certainly do not lack hockey IQ. Since junior, you've gone better and better. With Erie, you were tremendous. With the Marlies, you were tremendous. And you're succeeding with the Maple Leafs. What's been the key to your gradual success, Connor? Because it's incredible how well you're able to play in the NHL as a rookie.
I think on the ice it's been my attention to detail. So I think even with the Marlies, I was able to put up a lot of points is because I was able to play a lot. I feel like Gordon Deneen, who was the coach there, was able to trust me, and because I try to do my best to take care of the puck and play defensively, and with that I got more opportunity. So that on the ice, obviously I think I think the game quite well. Off the ice, I felt like I have good work ethic off the ice. So I take my summers extremely seriously and try to take steps forwards every year, and I think it's put me in a good spot to succeed.
Well, I mean, absolutely. And besides your work ethic and your will to prepare, and I mean, I could tell the people a million things, but you know what? I mentioned this to you when we visited a number of times during the year, that you talked about being comfortable. I thought at the beginning of the year you wanted to make sure you didn't make a mistake, because it was, that's a natural thing. You're not. And now once you got more comfortable and playing, and rather you don't worry about, because your instincts are so good and your vision's so good. I thought your game just got immensely better when that, and I don't know if you can comment on that.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. I think, confidence is massive, and no one can hand you confidence. Obviously people can, if as much as coaches, put me on the ice and he kind of helped me in that sort of way. But at the end of the day, you gotta just trust yourself and find it and really believe that you belong in the league. And I think that once I kind of, I hit a point and had a couple good games, I kind of felt that, I deserve to be here.
Right.
And I know I could play. And so I think that's where the confidence grows.
Well, listen, I know one guy that's got a lot of confidence. If they want me to coach that team, I knew who I'm going to be real confident with, because I've seen it in the past. And, I want the best things to happen to you because you deserve it. And people forget about, I know how hard you work in the summer, your will to prepare. It just isn't a natural thing. And where you've come from is Jesse. And, everybody that knows you privately or personally just wants the best for you. And I love your family and I love what you do. And the coaches are going to love you because of the way you play the game and your commitment. And I love you for coming on here, and I wanted to thank you a lot for doing that.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Sherry. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Keep punching, will you?
Thanks, Connor.
Yeah, I will.
Talk to you.
Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Bye. You too. Very articulate, Sherry, that Connor Brown.
He's a special kid, and, I've been fortunate enough. Hockey world's been good to me. I've been around a lot of great kids, and most of them are great kids. You know what I mean? When you talk to them about responsibility and preparation, and you visit with them a lot, and and then the added bonus is that they're bright guys too. You know what I mean? You hear this word about hockey bums. I mean, it's just not appropriate for these guys. These guys, Connor Brown, Connor McDavid's, or you can go on and on and on with these guys. These guys would have been successful in anything they endeavored to do, because they know about preparation, they know about hard work, and they know about getting along with people here. And they understand that respect begets respect.
And their intelligence is reflected in their play.
Oh, absolutely.
Smart player, 200-foot guy, Connor Brown.
Plays the whole rink, you know what I mean? Plays the whole rink.
And something really stuck out to me about what he said during the interview, Sherry. He said he's having fun. And that's so important. And it just seems as though as much pressure as the Leafs are feeling, other than the California swing they had, they've been having quite the fun year because they really have nothing to lose. They've had nothing to lose.
My theory, I used to tell our teams all the time, winning is fun. let's go have some fun.
Darn right.
Because it's a lot of fun.
Darn right. All right, Sherry. So to close out the show, you wanted to share a story in honor of International Women's Day.
Absolutely. You know, my mother has passed away a number of years ago, and I know I miss her every day. Because, and so I was reading this particular comment about, I can remember Mom and Dad were watching TV, and Mom said when we were in the house, "I'm tired and it's getting late. I think I'll go to bed." So she went to the kitchen to make sandwiches for the next day's lunches, rinsed out the popcorn balls, took meat out of the freezer for supper the following evening, checked our cereal boxes, filled the sugar container, put spoons and bowls on the table, and started the coffee pot for brewing for the next morning. She then put some wet clothes in the dryer, put a load of clothes into the washer, ironed a shirt, and secured a loose button. She picked up the game pieces left on the table, put the phone book back on the phone back on the chart, put the telephone book in the drawer. She watered the plants, emptied a wastebasket, and hung up a towel to dry. She yawned and stretched and headed for the bedroom. She stopped by the desk, wrote a note to the teacher, counted out some cash for the field trip, pulled a textbook out from hiding under the chair. She signed a birthday card for a friend, addressed and stamped the envelope, and wrote a quick note for the grocery store. She put both near her purse. Mom then washed her face, 3-in-1 cleanser, put on her night solution and age-fighting moisturizer, brushed and flossed her teeth, and filed her nails. And my dad called out and said, "I thought you were going to bed." "And I'm on my way," she said. So he put some water into the dog's dish, then made sure the doors were locked and the patio light was on. She looked in on us, and she turned out some bed lights and stuff like that, hung up a shirt, threw some dirty socks in the hamper, and had a brief conversation with me, who was still up studying. In her own room, she set the alarm, laid out clothing for the next day, straightened up the shoe rack. She added 3 things to her 6 most important things to do list, and she took a look at all the goals that she had to do. About that time, my father turned off the TV and said, "I'm going to bed." And you know what? That's how extraordinary these women are. And gosh, I miss my mother. That's why it's quite a day. Don't ever forget your mother. Don't forget your sister. And don't forget your friends.
That was beautiful, Sherry. You're a fantastic storyteller.
See you next week.